Hi, and welcome to another edition of Scraping the Docket with me, Mr. X-Parté. The other day, we were scraping the Selectable Output Control docket, and we found a filing from Bill Paul, the CEO of Neothings Inc. We decided we would chat with Bill and see why he filed, how SOC would impact him, and what his company does. And we're here with Bill Paul, the CEO of Neothings Inc. And I guess the first thing I'd like to ask you to do, Bill, is just introduce yourself and introduce your company, please.
Sure. Well, my name is Bill Paul. I'm CEO and founder of Neothings. We started in 2005 to make video distribution systems for residential systems. And generally, these tend to be high-end residential systems, such as a home where there might be more than 4 TVs, 4 to 8, or maybe 16 or 20 TVs. So these tend to be high-end homes. And what we make, when we say video distribution system, once you dive deeper into it, that's a product called a video matrix switch. So it can take multiple inputs and route that video to multiple outputs and send it throughout the home. There's quite a few companies in this space, and some of them you haven't heard of, and some of them are quite big companies, but they serve a pretty thriving market, and it's becoming more and more important because there are so much more electronics in the home now.
The next question I have for you is, why did you decide to file in the Selectable Output Control docket?
The thing that makes what we do possible is the fact that you can take a video output out of a source device like a cable box, and then you can generally do what you want with that video signal. You can make 2 copies of it and show it on 2 TVs at the same time, for example. You can also extend that video. You can, if you want to take that video and run it 200 feet through to the other side of a large home, you can do that. There's components that allow you to do stuff like that. So the nature of what we do is kind of dependent on how video has worked for pretty much the better part of 40 or 50 years. Along came digital video and the DRM associated with it, and that kind of changed the rules. It put the control over what you can now do with this video in your home to somebody else. So they can place those limitations on you and decide that you only get to, for example, send this to 1 TV at a time, or you're obviously not allowed to record it.
So have you had practical problems dealing with an analog versus HDMI kind of input?
To do the largest systems like we do, a large system might be 12 inputs and 50, 60, or maybe up to 100 outputs. Now that might not be in a home, that might be in a commercial like a sports bar type of application. But to do those types of systems and do it in a cost-effective way really requires that it be done with analog video.
Why does the digital add the cost in a way that analog doesn't?
If you want to compare analog component video, the bandwidth requirements, how much technology you need to get it from point A to point B is relatively low. So you can do it in a pretty cost-effective manner. With digital, each pixel, for example, on your screen is now a series of bits. And that could be, typically that's about 10 times as much bandwidth required to convey that same image across the wire. So if you, to put some real numbers on it, let's say for 1080i video in analog, you need maybe 100 megahertz or 150 megahertz of bandwidth to convey that image across to the other end. With digital, you now need 10 times that. So you could need 1.5 gigabits of bandwidth, and that's per channel, per red, green, blue channel. So when you multiply it out, just to do high definition, you need 3 to 6 gigabits of bandwidth. So it really creates some cost challenges in doing that basically the same thing, but for the same cost. You don't really get any savings unless you go back to compressed video. When you talk about compressed video, it becomes a lot more reasonable, but that creates a whole nother crop of rights issues and technology issues. That's kind of throwing more money at the problem to recompress an already uncompressed signal.
So it sounds like from your standpoint, there are 2 problems. There's a cost issue that is right up front, but then there's also the secondary or the second DRM issue. So it not only costs you more, but then you can do less with it.
Basically, to do HDMI or DVI, you also have to, there's 2 licenses that you have to sign to be able to handle this stuff and to be a manufacturer. There's an HDMI license from HDMI LLC, and there's an HDCP license from Digital Content Protection LLC. And with those 2 licenses now as a manufacturer, you're bound to certain agreements and some restrictions on what you do. So rather than saying, well, what's possible? What can I innovate? How can I, what kind of crazy things can I do with video to get it around the house and let people be completely creative? Now you're kind of you're forced to play their game, so to speak. You're forced to abide by those rules and do things like not, one obvious one is not convert a digital signal that was encrypted. You can't convert that back to analog for compatibility reasons.
I guess the last question I have for you is, obviously you're in this industry and this is very important to you, and people who are running sports bars and people who are doing these high-end AV setups, this is important too. But who are the other types of people do you think should care about this?
You have to look at, they've brought up this selectable output control issue under the guise of, we want to give you high definition movies in your home through video on demand early before they come out on DVD. But what's to say that that doesn't get extended a little bit? Whereas, what's the mechanism to keep it in that realm? Why not, say, a pay-per-view event, like people are into the fighting pay-per-view things? Or what about a premier sports event? Maybe a playoff game, maybe the Super Bowl. What's to stop those types of contents from being protected also? Because they're all in a group of individuals. The people that own the sports content, they have those same interests and desires too. If they see that, hey, this group was able to control their content by doing this, so we want to do that now also. And there's a lot more people that will be affected by this than what they're predicting also, because what we see is, even today, I mean, we make a good business selling analog video equipment to run large homes. And there's a lot of people that are probably Hollywood, people that have a large home that don't even realize how their home works and how that video is getting from one side of the house to the other. And they themselves would even be affected by this. So, there's a lot of TVs out there that have HDMI inputs, and just because it has an HDMI input does not mean that it's capable of being used. The wires are already in the wall. The capability to deliver HDMI to that TV may not be there, or there could be some compatibility issues. We have digital video products also. We're developing them. We've got, instead of using HDMI, we chose to do digital video over fiber. So that's our big push, and we're pushing people to put fiber in the walls and be prepared, because I think it is inevitable that over a longer term that component analog video will go away, but I'd like to see that die a natural death over many, many years, rather than a quick one which causes a large disruption for consumers.
Well, I want to thank you very much for joining us today. I really appreciate you giving us a little bit of perspective on this. So thank you for joining us.
Sure. Thank you for your work on the issue.
Now it's your turn. How do you think selectable output control impact you? Leave us a video comment below. We'll check it out. If we like it, we may even feature it on the next Mr. X-Parté.